Hey, how's everyone doing today? This is my first video. I guess you can say it's more of like a vlog style, where I'm just out and about. I'm just walking at a park. It's a beautiful park, Steve Ambrose Park in Orange. Well, it's on the border of Orange and Anaheim and Tustin, kind of where everything meets up. And I'm out here just trying a new style of video, and I thought I'd share a nice little story. It's a story about why it's important to value your home right. Now the crazy part is there's a tractor, so I don't know how the quality is going to sound like with this mic. Hopefully it doesn't interfere too much. But a little bit about me. My name is Leo Luna. I sell real estate in Orange County. Well, I try to sell real estate here in Orange County. Um, so far, my Orange County listings have been rentals. One rental, we were able to help a family find a property under really strict time constraints. I basically had 3 weeks to find them a new place to stay, and there was a unique situation with them because, you know, there wasn't really any pay stubs. They own a business, and they hadn't filed their tax returns yet, so we didn't have any documentation. So we just had to go based off of bank accounts, which uh, which was pretty interesting. But anyways, we were able to lock them into a home within about 2 weeks, so enough time for the deadline of when they had to leave their current rental. And it made me happy, to be able to help a family, as a husband, wife, and 2 kids, and we were able to secure 'em, a nice place in Irvine. And the amount of communication, I mean, I'm still going to communicate no matter what, but you really have to communicate at a high level with individuals, just so that way you can make sure that you get the deal done. And the other listing I had was actually one of my first, or not listings, but my other rental that I had was they were actually a little bit further away. They were more towards, the RSM Trabuco Canyon area, and they were also a new family, husband and wife. They were actually, she was like just had a newborn, and so we just, had to find them a new place to start their family, and we were able to find them a place. Took them about maybe a month, 2 months tops, but we were able to find them a beautiful home, perfect backyard for their dog, and it was another family that I helped. Well, it was one of the first families I helped. So, working with rentals was definitely good. And, there's not a lot of money to be made in rentals. You get some, but it's not life changing, right? You expect to go into real estate and, sell homes. But, I think I found a lot of joy just, helping families find the next place to live because I know how stressful that can be. Um, so I actually secured my first listing. It was actually through a family member, and it was more of like a in-law, but I was able to secure a listing through the family, and it was a pretty good feeling because I went on a listing appointment, and it was more of like like counseling them, and not counseling, but more of like advising them what the timeline was going to be, how things were going to be set up, and it went really smooth. It was almost like it just kind of fell in the lap, I guess you can say. And I gotta watch where I'm walking too. Um, just kind of landed, and oh, beautiful weather out here. And what was really cool about that was the seller was for an older individual, looking to downsize. And the longer that I'm in real estate, I'm realizing that there's a lot of downsizers out there. A lot of older people. They have a deceased loved one, and they are just living alone, right? No one to care for them, really no support, and they're just kind of, ending the chapter. And what's interesting is, these people like really love to go out and just live life, right? I had a listing appointment that I went to where the gentleman was, he went to senior centers, just part of the senior community, and it was pretty awesome. But he was just ready to downsize. Big home, 2,200 square foot, just ready to go into a community that was more like-minded and an older community. I was ready to just kind of like live a simpler life with not so much space in the home. So there's a lot of people that are looking to just downsize, and there are ways to do that. So going back to the listing, um, they didn't know the market, and that's where my job came in, right? To come in and advise and give them some scenarios and let them know, if we price it here, what it's going to look like, price it there. And the property had some, deferred maintenance, which is usually the case with, you know, older individuals that are homeowners. And there are solutions, right? You can do the repairs, you can clean up, things like that. But in this case, it was time to kind of walk away from the home and not really invest any more into it. And time wasn't something that it was very protective of a home. So they don't want to have people come in and remodel and do all the things. So so it was fine, and we looked at the market and we kind of priced it accordingly. And it's funny how the pricing story worked out, because with the pricing, um, we came in at 705, or I'm sorry, not 705, 715. And one of the things for pricing was there was a property that was about a block and a half away that was exactly the same floor plan and same type of, same model, everything. The only thing different was that this home was just, had better, finishes. It had been remodeled. The paint looked fresher, and so it had some improvements. They came to the market before our listing came to the market, and they came in at 750. And when they came in at 750, I advised my seller. I was like, we got some maintenance we got to do. We want to definitely sell it, so I think we should price it in at 715. That's a good number to come in. Um, Originally, I was thinking more 725, but after looking at all the comps and everything and really getting down to the nitty gritty of the numbers, 715 was the most comfortable solution. So we went to the market. So after about maybe 30 days of the market, we had a lot of great showings. Open houses were some of the best that I've seen in a while, because I was doing open houses to generate business. And my open houses that I went to maybe had 1, 2 individuals in 3 hours. They're just sitting and you're waiting. But these open houses for the listing was right around, I'd say, like 4 to 6 people per like 3 hours of an open house. So we had some really good foot traffic coming in. No offers though. I think we got our first offer in after about a month, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we went live at 7:15. The house next door or down the street was 750. Well, about 2 weeks later, they did a price reduction from 750 to 739. And in my head, I was like, okay, you know what, the market's like, I feel like we priced it good. I was holding steady on that because, we could have easily did our price reduction, but we just waited. We let the market kind of wait, because I mean, the average days on markets in that area was around, I think it was like 38, 39. It wasn't anything crazy, but we were just still holding strong, and they weren't in a rush to sell, so that kind of made it beneficial. So then, um, we waited about another month, and we started getting some lowball offers, which is no big deal. It's just nice to see some offers coming in. Although they were really low, we declined those offers, and we waited. And about 30 days later, that property uh, that was down the street, they dropped it down from 739 to 699. Now I could tell that they were doing the pricing strategy of like, okay, they knew our property, um, and so they dropped it to try to get a sell because they were under a contract for another property, from what I heard. And so now our property was 715, and now they dropped it to 699. Now I could tell they're kind of not desperate, but they want to get some action. So they actually ended up selling it 2 weeks after that price drop. So mind you, they had three price reductions. They were able to finally sell it, and they sold it for, I think it was 715. Boom, right where we had priced it. Same model, just a little bit of deferred maintenance, but um, pretty much the same exact floor plan, same square footage, and everything. And so once I saw the 715 home price, I was like, okay, great. Now that home's off the inventory, now we can get really serious and see what buyer wants to move in that beautiful area. So about 2 weeks later after that, that's when we really got a lot of action, right? A lot of people were like, okay, that home's off the market. We want to try to get this one. So we still got a little bit of lowball offers, but we finally got an offer that was right where we were looking for. And we got an offer at 705. And, I talked to my seller, and the seller was actually happy. He was impressed. He was like, wow, I didn't think that we were going to get an offer this soon. We did zero price reductions in the whole of our listing, right? He accepted the 705. He thought it was it was a good terms, right? And it was an opportunity to get a new family and have that family start their journey as being homeowners. And we priced it knowing that it didn't work, right? So we had that price in mind, which is why we weren't going to go for those lowball offers, because we've already accounted for that. So we went under contract and we sold it. Now it's important to know that when you have a property and you don't list it correctly the first time, it really just adds a lot of days on the market. And could the people down the street gotten a better offer if they price it correctly? Probably. They probably could have priced it at 720, 725 before we came on the market. They probably would have got some excitement. They probably could have sold it for 725, 730 if it was a little bit of competition. Instead, their listing kind of got a little stale, and they were going down. So you got to be careful with the aspirational pricing of things, right? So you have to understand where the market was, and interest rates back in the time of July of last year were around. I think they were going down from like 6.5, 6.6. They were going down to the 6.4, 6.3 because I know when we went under contract for our listing, the buyers um, should have locked in at like 6.3. But after about 2 weeks, about 25 days ish. Now, granted, we had a 45-day close because the seller and the buyers agreed to a 45-day, so that way we didn't have to stress too much for finishing the move out. So we had a 45-day close, and that actually helped them out because they were kind of waiting for rates to maybe go down a little bit, and they actually didn't. So those rates, when they should have locked in right when they closed the deal at 6.3, 6.4, it actually shot up to about 6.7, I believe, is what they shot up to. Now, luckily, they still qualified for financing. That was no issue, but it was more of like the delays really kind of hurt them on that. But we still closed on time at the 45 days, and everything worked out great. And it was my first listing ever, right? So um, even though like I'm still a new agent, um, I like to think I'm good with numbers, right? Look at the data, be able to analyze it. Matter of fact, I teach my daughter the math skills that she's got to learn in school, and that's kind of what I work on and focus. And I've always loved math, algebra and pre-algebra, and calculus, things like that. So um, understanding the numbers and seeing the comps in the area and really knowing what we're competing against in the market just kind of helps make sure that you price it right the first time. Because if you don't price it right, you're going to be chasing the dollar amount. And it's funny because a little blurb that I heard a while back from a real estate agent Facebook group was, who's ever willing to but the highest number is going to win the house. So the seller wants the highest number, the seller gets to keep the house. If the buyer gets an opportunity to put in the highest number, they're going to get the house. But I know a lot of times the pricing of a home, that's actually the first time that I saw how pricing affects how fast a home will get sold, without compromising, leaving equity on the table, right? Because everyone wants to net the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. And, we had that home sold in 80 days. We wanted a contract on like day 45 ish, maybe it was like 42. Um, but yeah, so my first listing, we were able to sell it within the 45 days, at least get it under contract and, and net the most amount. So if you have any questions about what your property might be worth, and you just want to run the numbers and see what that looks like, I'm more than happy to provide no obligation consultations. But just want to share that story with you and tell you, you know, my clients, I got their backs 100%, right? And whether it's a renter that needs to move in 2 weeks, I'm gonna fight tooth and nail to make sure that we make that lease reality. Or if you're trying to list it and you're in Orange County, um, even in Anaheim, Villa Park, Irvine, anywhere out there, um, we can make it happen, right? So just want to share. I got other stories with this listing that I want to share with you, but I just want to share my first of many. And I understand that every transaction is a little different, right? Not all transactions are the same, but the biggest thing that I've learned is to be adaptable, right? That's any business. You want to succeed in business, you got to become adaptable, and I didn't even mention having to talk about commissions. When we went under contract, um, we were we went under contract for, I think it was like 4% total commissions, and then we had to switch it up because we had to explain to the sellers, hey, you know what, like the NAR settlement came through, and this is how we're my transitioning to this new way of talking about commissions. And so we talked about it, and we adjusted, and we got the documents done, and we made it happen. So a lot of changes, but in business you got to be adaptable, right? So let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comments below. um, always kind of like any questions you might have. Like I said, I'm still a new real estate agent, just trying to get out there. I cold call almost every day. I used to door knock, but I haven't been able to do that anymore. So I stick to social media, door knock, cold calling, or not door knocking, cold calling. And I have a database that I email and I text, I call, and I send out my newsletters. So let me know if you want any of that information. Otherwise, I'll do a part two on this and let you know what other things I learned about this listing. All right, take care.